For a while now, I'd been looking for an interesting story to explain the concept of early adopters. So, as part of that process, I asked myself what I was an early adopter for and what my behavior was as an early adopter. So, the first thing I looked at was the technology space. And I was an early adopter for smartphones and apps back in the day, in the early days of the smartphone. But I no longer am. I use a 3-year-old phone, which is probably a 5-year-old model. So definitely not a early adopter for smartphones anymore. And then I asked myself, what am I an early adopter for? And I came up with two things. The first was music. I love listening to music, and keep trying new music. And back in around 2012, I had actually set up a DLNA-based FLAC streaming network at home, so that I could listen to music anywhere in the house at high fidelity. And when Apple started streaming lossless music in India last year, I was probably one of the first to turn it on. But the whole space of music streaming with all the bit rates and lossless audio and all of that is very geeky and not really relatable to a lot of people. Then I looked at the second industry for which I'm an early adopter: alcohol. I have been experimenting with alcohol and beers in particular for quite some time now. So I figured that would be a very interesting space to look for stories about early adopters. In today's story, we will look at how I discovered BIRA, and how BIRA grew its market share, and the role the early adopters played in how that happened. Before I get into the story, let me give a little bit of background about the main protagonist, which is not me, which is BIRA 91, and also a bit of context about the market at the time. BIRA 91 is a venture capital backed beer manufacturer. They're headquartered out of New Delhi, and they launched their first two beers in India in early 2015. The two beers they launched at the time were BIRA White and BIRA Blonde, and they launched it in New Delhi in early 2015. And in late 2015, around the November timeframe, they launched these two beers in Bangalore as well. BIRA 91 is currently one of the fastest growing beers in the world, and they have about 7 or 8 flavors of beer today. The beer market in India is dominated by Kingfisher, and there are local brands such as Golden Eagle in Tamil Nadu, High Voltage in the Andamans, and the King's Beer in Goa. These are available locally and very popular with the local crowd, but at a national level, if you go into a new place, the beer you would ask for is Kingfisher. Imported beers such as Hogarden, Corona are also available, but they're available probably only in the tier 1 cities, and they're priced at about 4 times the price of Kingfisher. With that context set, let's get on with the story. So this happened in November or December of 2015. I used to work for a company called Sabre at the time, and I used to have calls till late in the evening, Monday to Thursday. But on Friday evenings, I would not take any calls, and I would sort of wind up work early. And on my way back from office, I would stop at the neighborhood liquor store and pick up four bottles of Hogarden. And then my wife and I would have that over Friday night dinner to kind of wind down for the weekend. So one day when I was at the store, I went to pick up my Hogardens, and then I noticed that there was this new beer which was kept right next to Hogarden. It was an interesting looking bottle, had a picture of a monkey on it. So it piqued my curiosity. I picked it up, and this is something I always do, pick up a bottle and read the story on the label. So this beer, which is called BIRA White, was apparently an Indian beer being manufactured in Belgium, and it was a wheat beer. So I figured, this sounds interesting. I should probably try this. And then I asked the shopkeeper, do you any inputs on this beer? He just said it's a new beer. Very helpful, right? And then I looked at the price. It was half the price of Hogarden. So what I did was I picked up 3 bottles of Hogarden, 1 bottle of Bira, went home, tried it, loved it. Next week I picked up 4 bottles of Bira, no Hogardens, right? And the week after I went back and I picked up a whole crate of Bira. And we threw a party that weekend, and the beer that was served was Bira. And over the next couple of weeks, we had a couple of more parties, and the beer being served was always Bira from then on. Right? And people, the guests, my friends, my family, the guests, they loved it, and they also started trying out Bira on their own. And once Bira started gaining popularity and market share, they started their manufacturing operations in India, which helped them bring the price down so that it was it could compete more with Kingfisher on price on in terms of price. Me though, while I was buying Bira as my staple beer, I kept trying other brands that kept popping up, like Simba, White Owl, there was the Eight Finger Eddie, People's Lager, White Rhino, Hopper, and whatnot. I just kept trying different beers to see, if there was anything new that was coming out, which is really interesting. And sometime in 2019, I noticed that the flavor profile of Bira changed slightly. Maybe it was just me, but I felt it changed slightly, and I did not like it anymore. And I stopped buying Bira completely. And in 2020, I discovered a new beer, Geist beer, and they had a brewery right next to my house, and they started selling growlers, 2-liter growlers that you could take home and drink. So I completely stopped Bira and shifted to Geist beer. And in January of 2021, which was last year, I stopped drinking beer completely, and now I drink only fresh lime soda. But I still go to the liquor store every now and then to pick up new brands of beer or new brands of alcohol to get my friends and family to try them out. Now let's look at what are some of the key learnings about early adopters from my own behavior here. The first one is that just because I'm not an early adopter for technology, did not mean that I was not an early adopter for something else, which was beer in this case. And it probably also means that I could be an early adopter for other things which are similar to beer. So for example, when I go to a new restaurant, I would always order the most exotic sounding item on the menu just to try it out, right? What's to lose? Right. So early adopters, tend to show similar behavior in adjacent industries or adjacent spaces. The second thing is that early adopters love to take risks. They don't mind making few mistakes, but they don't want to miss out on the next big thing. Just like, while I was buying Hogardens at the time, I didn't mind picking up a bottle of Bira just to try it out. And if I liked it, great. If I didn't lose much. Just one beer that night, right? So not a big deal. The third is early adopters love to show off their new finds. Just like, I threw all those parties where the beer being served was Bira. They love to show off their new finds, and it gives them a kick. They want to be considered cool in that space. So that is something, so you can rely on your early adopters for word of mouth. The fourth thing is that early adopters need not stay loyal with you. Just like they tried you and loved you, does not mean that they will stay with you forever. Just like I tried, even though I was buying Bira regularly, I kept trying other brands on the side. And at the drop of a hat, or a perceived change in flavor, I completely shifted from Bira and went on to the next cool thing, which was Geist, right? So don't expect your early adopters to be with you forever. What you need to do is move on from early adopters to the early majority and the late majority, because they're more likely to be loyal and stay with you. Early adopters keep moving on to the next big thing. Now, let's look at what are some of the things that BIRA did really well from an execution perspective. I think the first is that they nailed their early adopters really well. They figured that they wanted to target people who had moved on from Kingfisher already. They didn't like Kingfisher, but had moved on from Kingfisher, and those people were likely drinking imported beer. And these people did not mind paying a premium. They were paying 4 times the price of a Kingfisher. So that's the people they were targeting, and that's why they placed their beers in liquor stores right next to the imported ones. Especially with Bira White, which is a wheat beer, they were targeting wheat beer lovers, and that's why they kept it right next to Hogarden, and it got picked up. The second thing they did really well was ensuring the quality of the product. The beer at the time was top notch, and the early adopters like myself were really happy with it, that we continued to buy it and spread the word. So they ensured that the quality of product was top notch. And the third thing that they did really well was that once demand picked up, they moved their operations, or they moved their manufacturing operations from Belgium to India. So when they started operations, they'd set up a factory. They probably outsourced a factory in Belgium. And then they were importing beer into India. This resulted in a higher cost due to primarily transportation and taxation. But once they validated demand that this beer would sell in India, they set up a manufacturing plant in India, which helped them reduce costs drastically and compete with Kingfisher. And today, BIRA is probably the brand that can take on Kingfisher in the medium term in India. Regardless of whether you're working on a new product or working on a new feature on an existing product to take it to a new market, it is really critical to nail your early adopters and target them really well. And if you want to bounce off ideas, give me a shout and let's chat over a fresh lime soda. And if you have an interesting story about early adopters, let me know. I would love to chat with you and find out, and possibly even interview in one of the upcoming videos. If you found this video insightful, do give it a like. Thank you for watching.